Welcome to the Existential Edge podcast, presented by the United States Association for Small Business and Entrepreneurship. How is entrepreneurship transforming university environments? What are its most compelling lessons? How can an entrepreneurship program make maximum impact on its ecosystem and change the lives of students and others in the process? Join Patrick J. Murphy, Goodrich Endowed Chair, Professor, and Director of the Entrepreneurship Program at the University of Alabama at Birmingham as he hosts leading entrepreneurs from across the country and beyond for provocative and insightful discussions of these and other questions.
Welcome, everybody, to the Existential Edge podcast. This is the podcast for entrepreneurship educators where we talk with the most impressive entrepreneurs around the world who are doing a variety of different entrepreneurial things in their ventures and in their lives. The purpose of our conversations is to distill lessons that we can use when we train the next generation of entrepreneurs. I am Patrick J. Murphy, the Goodrich Chair and Director of the Entrepreneurship Program at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. And today we have Mr. Jagil Duggar. He is a serial entrepreneur and he has a history of very interesting entrepreneurial projects and activities that we're going to learn about. Jagil, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Patrick. And I'm glad to be in your presence. I'm excited to be here. I know that you're doing a lot of great things in the city of Birmingham and around the country. And you have a unique way of introducing entrepreneurship, which is actually ununique to an entrepreneur, but it's great to see you willing to take an avenue towards really giving your students a realistic approach of what they can expect after college.
That's right, man. I really appreciate that. Thank you. So in this show, we have three major sections. The listeners know that. The first 15 minutes or so, we're going to get to know you really well. Not going to really talk about your business, but that will come in the second portion of our conversation, where we'll take about 15 minutes to learn all about your current entrepreneurial projects, but anything that you used to work on that you want to talk about, anything about your practical experience that you want to share. And then in the third portion of our conversation, we're going to talk about entrepreneurship education. So let's go ahead and get started getting to know you a little bit. So Jagil, if you could, we have an audience of entrepreneurship educators here all over the world, not just in the US, but in other countries. So we'd really like to get to know you before we get to know about your entrepreneurial ventures. So tell us where you're from, how you come up, like all your critical experiences that you've had that really define who you are and your values.
Yeah, sure. I'll be as open as possible and kind of introduce myself about who I am. I was born in Detroit, Michigan. And I moved to Birmingham, Alabama at a young age. And so I am, of course, African-American male. And I was born into an era of low economic poverty, both in Detroit and in Birmingham. My granddad was an entrepreneur, and my dad was also an entrepreneur. He owned his own construction company. And so I grew up in a time where I was forced to work with my dad in the hot summers, and he did a bunch of roofing, and so my dad did not have a college degree. He only had a high school diploma, and so he and his brother had a construction company where it was traditionally focused on commercial buildings, where they put roofs on commercial buildings and they did bricks and things like that. So that was kind of my summers off from school. It was spent doing hard labor. And so my first venture of entrepreneurship was in elementary school. I guess I would say probably maybe around 5th grade, 6th grade. They came out with these Charms blow pops. They were about, I guess, 3 cents or so for these purple Charms blow pops. And so I decided that I would take those Charms blow pops and sell them to my classmates for a quarter, because I realized that once we got to school, they didn't have any access to those blow pops. So I would buy them for 3 cents, and then I would take them to school and sell them for a quarter. So that was my first venture of entrepreneurship.
And were you the only one in that class doing that?
I was the only one in the class doing that. Yeah. And so I became kind of like the candy guy. I was the candy boy that everybody knew. And, it was totally against what we were supposed to be doing. We weren't supposed to have candy at school. And so I was breaking some rules there. But yeah, I became the candy boy of the classroom. Yep.
So did that come from your dad or your parents, or did you just come up with that yourself to do it? Where did that impulse come from to do that?
Interesting. It just came from myself. It was just my own idea to do that. My dad did teach me at an early age that if I wanted to make a living or if I wanted to make any money, I had to earn it. So, even with him working in construction, it was always very structured. I would get paid based on the hours that I worked doing construction. So he taught me at a young age the process of earning a dollar. And so, I came up with the procedure of the Charms Blow Pop. That was just a natural thing that I guess somehow just got into. But yeah, it was all natural.
That's there's we're entrepreneurship educators, right? And those of us who have been doing this for a long time, we know that there are certain lessons that are really, really hard to teach, or maybe even can't be taught. And I think that folks that grew up with a background like yours, needing to work hard and learning how to deal and buy things and arbitrage and sell things at a really, really young age, there are certain lessons there that I don't think when you get older you can really learn those. You kind of have to learn them coming up. But when you go to school and you become an entrepreneur and you pursue business education, like we're going to hear about in just a minute, you can learn all that stuff. But at that point, your peers, the people who are in the classrooms with you, you have certain lessons that they can't learn. And I'm going to let you expound more on that, but I got to tell the audience, we're going to talk about his ventures here in a minute. Jagil is a serious tech entrepreneur that has some really successful projects that we're going to learn about here in just a minute. You can look him up and Google him, and we'll share all of his information and all of that. But Jagil, if you could, I think it'd be really interesting if you really talk about those unique experiences you had coming up that gave you resilience and really made you who you are in a strong sort of unimpeachable kind of way that gave you confidence to do what you're doing today.
Yeah, so moving ahead, I became successful in sports, and I am a former football player, and so I learned a lot of lessons through sports regarding tenacity and ambition and not giving up. I'm a former running back, so I know what it's like to get hit hard and get back up, and I think so. I think I learned a lot of those things due to sports. But after finishing high school, I was a top running back a top running back in the country in football. So I went on to pursue a college football scholarship at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. And so I had some things there where everything was still focused around sports and learned a lot. And moving ahead, I pursued a professional career after my collegiate career in sports. Of course, like most athletes, you want to play in the NFL for 20 years, which that's the not for long league, so it doesn't happen. And so I did pursue that dream and kind of found myself in a transitional phase after things started to fall apart, from realizing that, hey, I'm not going to be a Hall of Famer, and I got to find something to kind of transition into. So my first stop was trying to transition into teaching.
Okay, hold on, Jagil. Let me just ask you real quick. You did play for the NFL, right?
So not actually game, just practice squad, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you were on a team and you did a deal, and okay.
Right. And Canada, yeah. So and Canada, right? And that's correct. So I was a standout running back. I had quite a bit of records at UAB. I rushed for over 2,000 yards in rushing. So coming out of college, I had pretty good status for the pros. So I did pursue a career for about 5 years, which was a really rocky career. It was kind of up and down, going from team to team. Handling rejection is what I was dealing with, and realizing that sports is just like everything else. It's a business. And so I did learn fast that was a business. So I did find myself allowing myself to continue to work hard and drive hard and practice hard and all those things. And not knowing if that rejection was going to occur, and realizing that so many of those things were out of my control.
So there's a kind of lesson from failure that you learned? Not failure in that few people make it as far as you did, but I'm talking about you didn't achieve what you set out to achieve, but it sounds to me like you turned that into a life lesson that you were able to profit from. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, that it's great. Looking back, the older I get, the more I appreciate my career. And I realized that based on my circumstances of coming from a low economic area, that's what actually gave me the opportunity to go to college. That's what actually gave me the opportunity to see different cities and travel and do those things and meet great people, things that I probably wouldn't have never done if I wouldn't have the gift of being able to run a football. So I look at it from that aspect now, but when you're a 25, 26-year-old kid, you don't have that maturity. So you look at it from an aspect of failure. And you look at it from an aspect of, I set out to be an NFL Hall of Famer, or I set out to make millions of dollars in the pros. And so when you don't get that, you definitely handle that as rejection. I can recall, having to deal with that failure and that rejection. And I can recall my mind state at that particular time at 25, 26 years old, and thinking that my whole world was falling apart. Thinking like, oh my God, what I set out to do is actually starting to seem less likely to happen. And that's a hard thing for a 25, 22, 23, whatever age. Even some 50, 60-year-olds can't handle failure. So it's definitely something hard. I mean, I've seen stories where professional athletes or on the collegiate level, they handle failure, and some of them there's been situations where they've committed suicide. There's been situations where, they weren't able to come back and find another career that they found within sports to make them whole as a person. And that's one of the things that I thank God for most, is that I'm able to happily wake up every day. I found something that I enjoy doing just as much as I enjoy playing the game.
That's right. And we're going to learn about your entrepreneurial projects here in a minute. I'm really intrigued by your values and your resiliency. If you think about yourself as an entrepreneur and as a leader, what are some of the words that come to mind to describe your personal values, the things that really account for your success in life and in business?
I think words such as resilience, I think words such as ambition, self-motivated. I think words such as humble, things like that come to mind.
Right. And are those, how teachable are those? Are these, you learned them through experience, but what we're really interested in this podcast is doing whatever we can to instill humility and resilience and ambition and motivation into students. And we're going to talk about that later, but do you think these are teachable, or do you think you got to just live through the experience in order to learn them?
I think part of it is teachable. I think another part of it, you have to live and experience it. But I think the part that is teachable is the information part of it, to try to let people know that it's going to happen and how to handle it when it happens, of course. But I think that part is teachable. But I think a lot of it is instinct, and a lot of it is something that you have to live with it, because even if you talk about it and learn about it in a book and you go over it in the classroom, it feels totally different than when you get hit by that car.
That's right. That's right. And all right, that's really interesting. Okay, everybody, we are going to talk in the next segment about Jagil's business activities, and then we're going to talk about entrepreneurship education when we come back on the Existential Edge podcast.